Welcome back to another episode of the Yellow Gloves podcast. We're a few days late, but we're here to talk about Cage Warriors 156 that happened in Wales, headlined by Darren Stewart and Matt Bonner. We had a bunch of crazy finishes on this card, a bunch of really special moments as well. It's one in particular that I really want to talk about. But like always, we're going to go, top all the way to the bottom and talk about every single fight on the card. And while it was an entertaining card, while it was a fun card, there's obviously a little bit of, I don't know, I guess there's a bit of disappointment, a bit of built-in disappointment, because we didn't get the fighters we thought we were going to get, or the fighters that were slated for this card. One of the most important ones was obviously Oban Elliott. When they first announced that they were going to be in Wales, they, posted a picture of Oban Elliott. Who should Oban fight? It was this thing for a couple of months. Who will Oban fight? I personally thought that Reece McEwan was going to get signed to the UFC, and they were going to put an interim belt on the line, or not interim, but they were going to vacate the belt, and Oban Elliott was going to be one half of the welterweight title match. That's what I thought was going to happen in Wales. We don't know what the plan actually was. Oban Elliott, as of recording this, has been called up to Dana White's Contender Series. So obviously I ranted about George Hardwick, and if you haven't listened to that, go listen to the previous, a couple of episodes back, because on that I kind of went crazy on the UFC, because I don't think George Hardwick should be anywhere near Dana White's Contender Series. But someone like Oban Elliott does make sense, because he's not a champion in Cage Warriors. We've seen him suffer defeat not too long ago. He's a very talented fighter, so it makes sense for someone like that to progress through Dana White's Contender Series, as opposed to someone like Hardwick, who's defended his title multiple times, is one of the hottest prospects in the UK, is flashy, is stylish, is great on the mic, great personality, student of the game. So I'm really happy for Oban, super excited for him to make his UFC debut, I guess, because I would hope that he goes on and wins and then gets his shot at the UFC. That's my hope. So we'll see how he progresses. But obviously, yes, we were supposed to see Oban Elliott on this card. Unfortunately, we didn't. But when we found out he was going to get called up to the Contender Series, we got some great news to go with that unfortunate news. Obviously, losing a Cage Warriors fighter that you enjoy watching isn't always fun, although you want to see them succeed. The selfish part of you wants to see them continue to fight in the Yellow Gloves, of course. But the great news that we had tied into that was that Mason Jones had been released from the UFC and returns to Cage Warriors. So, they tied a lot into that. They're in Wales. Mason Jones will be fighting on this card. Don't worry, we've rescued the card. We're going to have your Mason Jones headline against X fighter. They never announced who it was. And then I believe a couple weeks out, or maybe like 10 days out from this card, we then received the news that Mason Jones, they didn't have an opponent for Mason Jones. And the way that they phrased it was that everyone's ducking Mason Jones and that no one wants to fight him. So, that's the way that the social media team went. And I get that, because you want to promote a fighter's return. But, we've seen in the last few, even this year alone, we have seen big Cage Warriors fighters fight people that are debutants in the promotion, or fighters that have no reason fighting someone that good. So I hesitate to believe that they couldn't find someone to fight Mason Jones. I don't think there's any quality control that they had to do. They could have really put him in against anyone, get his confidence back up after being released, get him a big win in front of his home crowd. So a little bit disappointed. I don't know if there was maybe it was a money thing. Maybe they couldn't figure out contracts, and maybe it was on the side of the fighters that they wanted to fight Mason Jones. Maybe they couldn't get the money right. It was relatively short notice, but you got to think someone out there who doesn't want to fight a guy coming off the UFC and a guy who's a two-weight champion in the organization. I don't know. It's a bit of a disappointment, really. I was really excited for this Wales card. I know there's people who paid to go to the event, and in hindsight, they definitely had a great time, because we had some great fights and we had some great moments on this card. But, people probably paid on the pretense that they'd get to see Oban and Mason Jones, and to not get that, and get Darren Stewart and Matt Bonner as a headliner, which, don't get me wrong, two fighters that I really respect, two fighters that I really enjoy watching, but it wasn't supposed to be the headline. It wasn't supposed to be the second, like the co-main or anything like that. Like in an ideal world, it probably would have been Oban, Mason, and then Darren Stewart and Bonner. or if, it would be co-main if we'd lost only one of those fights. So, not ranting here, but obviously a bit of a disappointment. Card turned out great, and I think we should stop talking and let's go right into Darren Stewart versus Matt Bonner, and we'll work our way all the way down like we always do. Let's get cracking. So Darren Stewart versus Matt Bonner, decent fight, 3-rounder, despite being a headliner. Obviously, on short notice, they couldn't get the fighters to agree to fight for 5 rounds, and it makes sense. After seeing how depleted their gas tanks were after 3 rounds, I don't think that 5 rounds would have benefited anyone. Maybe we would have gotten a finish because one of the fighters might have gassed out potentially. But do you know what? I quite enjoyed this fight. It wasn't incredibly technical. It wasn't incredibly high paced. But when they both threw, they landed. It was one of those like guts and glory performances from both fighters. Even though Darren Stewart was the one who got his hand raised, there's an argument there that Matt Bonner could have won the fight. There was a lot going on. It was a war of attrition. I mean, you've got pretty much every strike that either guy threw landed, and there was not a great regard for defensive movement, especially like head movement. And then from an offensive grappling standpoint, Darren Stewart did a great job at taking Bonner down, and then Bonner did a great job at getting back to his feet relatively quickly. So I think Darren Stewart might have gotten him down maybe 14 or 16 times. I think it was quite a lot. But if we had the control time, for example, I don't think that it would amount to too much, because I do remember that every time Darren Stewart would take Matt Bonner down, he wouldn't really secure the hips. He'd get him down like around his knees or whatever, and then Matt Bonner would just scoot up, use the fence to get back up to his feet. So Darren Stewart did a great job at mitigating all of the pressure and the striking of Bonner. There were some sketchy moments, towards the end of the fight, and especially at the end of each round, it felt like Bonner was kind of edging his way back into the fight. Landed some really good shots on Darren Stewart. Stewart landed some great shots on Bonner too. There's a great picture that Dolly, who's one of the Cage Warriors photographers, that she posted on Instagram, and it's this moment where Bonner's down and Darren Stewart goes for like this flying punch while he's down, very like Pride-esque. Like if you've seen the Shogun, everyone knows the iconic Shogun picture. So it's similar to that. Obviously, it doesn't land. It's not as cool, but it was a really like nice shot. But in terms of the fight, I mean, Stewart looked good. Like had a really nice jab going early, like quick and stiff jab, which was really really good to see. Bonner was more head hunting, whereas Stewart was kind of mixing things up, which I think is what might have kind of edged it a bit for the judges. I personally thought 29-28 to either fighter was fair. Happy that Darren Stewart won, and it was a fair result, like I said. But I think the 30-27 that was in there was a bit harsh. I think round 3 was the clearest round of the entire fight, and I think that should have gone to Bonner. But rounds 1 and 2 were close. Happy to see Darren Stewart get his hand raised. I mean, this guy came out of the UFC down in the dumps, not on a great streak. Confidence must have been absolutely rattled. Comes back to the promotion that he particularly started in, that he was a champion in, gets absolutely dominated by Mick Stanton. And you start to think, well, has Darren Stewart lost it? And look, I'll hold my hands up. I said it when he lost to Stanton. I said, well, Darren Stewart just looks completely shot. This doesn't look like him. But then you listen to Stewart talk, you listen to his interviews, you listen to him on socials. This guy's a super honest fighter. Always talks about what's going on in his mind or how he's approaching things. And his whole approach now is that it doesn't matter how he wins, he just wants to win. And I think that's what's changed. Once he stopped thinking that he needs to be the entertainer, he doesn't always need to be the dentist. He can just win fights, and he'll always be the dentist because we'll always remember his knockouts, and that it's an iconic nickname, right? And he's got enough highlight reel finishes that he doesn't need to hunt them out every single time. But he's back in Cage Warriors now. He's won 3 on the trot after losing to Stanton. Definitely in title contention for me. I think he's the next guy up. Once you do the James Webb Stanton rematch, you throw Stewart in against the winner, maybe at the end of the year. Maybe there's a London card flying about. I need to look at the calendar. I know there's one coming up, but maybe there's another one. I believe there's one in November, maybe. You throw Stewart into that title match and you let him cook. You give him a chance to win his belt back, the belt that he once carried. And I think it would be a great fight, either him versus Stanton or him versus Webb. look, we've not spoken much about Matt Bonner. Bonner's a G. Bonner's an absolute veteran. I went on a bit of a rant midweek because I was, on Tapology, when you go and you look at picks and stuff like that, you can see people's comments, and people saying like, "Oh, Matt Bonner," so, or someone said something along the lines of Matt Bonner's a bum, or Matt Bonner only beats cans, right? And I remember looking at that and I was like, is it, like, what the fuck are you on about? Like, Matt Bonner is an absolute G, and not only that, Matt Bonner is a winning fighter and a guy who's beaten Mick Stanton, James Webb, James Sheehan, Matthias Frederick as well. The list goes on, and people are saying that it's a guy who only beats cans. I mean, it's an absolute joke. I mean, he's just practically had a very, very competitive fight with a former UFC fighter, a guy who could potentially still, rattle a couple of wins off in the UFC with this new mentality that he has. I'm sure he could beat one or two fighters. And I don't know, it seemed a bit weird when people rag on Bonner, because I know when you look at his record, you think, oh well, this guy's not great, but records don't really matter, especially in like on the UK circuit, when you've got guys who are just fighting each other, guys who aren't avoiding each other, guys who are fighting people who are up and coming, and you don't know who the next guy's going to be. You don't have enough tape on this person. You fight a guy who's 2-0, and you get knocked out, and you're like, oh, I lost to a guy who's only had two fights. That guy goes on to be Conor McGregor. That guy goes on to be a Paddy Pimblett or a Tom Aspinall or a Molly McCann, right? This happens a lot in the UK circuit. You've got people who have these really muddled records like Bonner does, but look, it's a winning record, and he's beaten top quality opposition. I mean, the names I just read off: Webb, Stanton, Frederick. Like, these are people who have held gold in the promotion. So a lot of respect goes out to Matt Bonner. Obviously, really competitive fight. I'm sure he probably thinks that he won, and I know there are a few people who argue that he has. I'm not here to tell you otherwise, but the actual winner of the fight was Darren Stewart. And let's keep rattling them off. I mean, I'm a big Darren Stewart fan. The walkouts are always great. The song choices are always great. Just a top fighter, and I can't wait to see him again. And I really, really hope it's for middleweight gold. So in our co-main event on this card, we had Reece McEwan versus Leonardo de Oliveira. Reece McEwan, what more can I say? Like, everyone who listens to me knows I'm a grappling nerd. I love grappling. And I've gone on record plenty of times to say that I think Reece McEwan is the hottest prospect, without doubt, coming out of Scotland at the moment. And just in general, out of the Cage Warriors circuit, I mean, we know that bantamweight is shark-infested waters at the best of times. And he's in that, you've got Nathan Fletcher, you've got Kalen Lochran, you've got all these people in there. And it's a tough division, but Reece McEwan gets another win in this division. The guy's just a fantastic grappler. But what I loved about this fight against Leonardo de Oliveira, McEwan was pressing really, really well. Nice use of the front kick. There was a moment where de Oliveira landed a really nice overhand left, like early into round one. But other than that, I mean, it was just one-way traffic. The prodding, like, front kicks to the body, like I said, were just beautiful. I remember he landed one, and then just from the trajectory of that front kick, he just shot straight in for a double leg. And I love that about McEwan. A lot of these guys who are good BJJ guys don't have great means of getting fights to the ground. Obviously, if you listen to this, you definitely watch the UFC, so there's no point in explaining to people. But, like a Mackenzie Dern or like a Brian Ortega, we always talk about these fighters like, well, if only they could get fights to the ground. So Reece McEwan's got that, which I really like. The double leg was beautiful, secured the takedown, and then he was just dominant on top. And what I love about McEwan, doesn't just settle for the position. He doesn't just fish for submissions. The guy was just striking over and over again. Nice elbows, nice strikes, and the strikes are to set up openings for the submission, right? He's striking to submit, but he's also striking hard enough that he could get the finish. And that's when we get to round two, when de Oliveira tries to sweep McEwan, and McEwan kind of, while he's falling from the sweep, reverses position and gets on top just, seconds later. And then it's just more of that smothering pressure. Not a crazy amount to talk about in this round, because McEwan just gets some damaging strikes going and then just keeps landing and landing and landing. And then he lands like 3 or 4 really, really nice elbows, and you start to see the referee hover in, lands a couple more. De Oliveira is just not fighting back whatsoever. Referee steps in. It was a really, really flawless performance from Reece. Second round, TKO. The guy's all finishes. He's all fun. Just, I want to see him fight now, like bigger names at 135. No disrespect to De Oliveira, but I want to see him in there with the best 135 as the Cage Warriors has to offer. I think he's ready. I think he deserves that shot. I'm not saying he should get a crack at gold immediately, because I would love to see Nathan Fletcher and Kanan Loughran go at it because of the history that they have as amateurs. I'd love to see that fight, but Reece McEwan should slot in there at some point. Maybe fight the winner of that, or if you need to keep him active, but I'd just give him either like someone who's really well known in the UK MMA circuit, or give him someone that is there or thereabouts to become a big name in the promotion. I want to see him fight better opposition, because I think that he's ready to make that jump. But Reece McEwan, just a fantastic performance, flawless, one of the better performances of the night, and just another win for one of the best fighters coming out of Scotland right now. We then had a light heavyweight bout between Andy Clamp and Hassan Abdenabi. Those who listen to the pod know that this fight was supposed to be in the Cage Warriors Manchester card, and that got cancelled, unfortunately. Andy Clamp pulled out due to injury. But if you listen to my analysis of that fight back then, you would have known that I said that, Abdenabi carries a lot of power, unknown quantity, because he's fought in rings. He hasn't really fought in cages, and he's looks like a powerful striker and gets a lot of his work done on the ground, but he's more of a club and sub, or not club and sub, but he's more of like a ground and pound finisher. He's doesn't carry a crazy amount of power on the feet, though he's got a kickboxing background. So there's a lot of question marks over Abdenabi. And I said that, look, all Andy Clamp needs to probably do is wrestle, and all Andy Clamp needs to do is get clamping, right? And all it took was one round. I think Abdenabi's only highlight really was a nice calf kick early that spun Clamp around, and then Clamp just goes. Some people will probably think that he did it with reckless abandon. I thought it was really well timed. Abdenabi goes for a really quick right hook, and Clamp just shoots from like across the cage, just goes straight into a double leg takedown. I mean, if Abdenabi had just, I don't know, thrown a knee quick enough, or he could have done a lot more to defend it, but the way that Clamp committed to it was brilliant. Got him down with ease. Clamp, we spoke about Reece McEwan throwing strike after strike after strike. Clamp wasn't doing that. When he was on the ground, it was seamlessly transitioning. I mean, you could see the difference, that the gulf in quality of the grappling between both fighters, because when Clamp got him down, it was just transitioning so nicely. Like, got to the body triangle really early with like 2.5 minutes to work, got his rear naked choke in, applied it really well. It was all like clean, swift movements that you probably wouldn't get if you fought someone who's way better versed on the ground. I think Clamp just took Abdenabi to school with a really, really nice rear naked choke, one of many submissions on this card. And, Abdenabi was, model professional, got up, shook Clamp's hand. Obviously, there's a nice kind of camaraderie between the two, but it was just one-way traffic for me. I was really impressed by Andy Clamp. Guy's one of the better submission guys in the UK. He's an absolute veteran. I'm glad he's fighting in Cage Warriors now. It took a while to get him on the promotion, and one of those fighters where you think like, damn, like, why was Clamp not fighting for Cage Warriors sooner? But he's here now. What's he going to do at 205? I don't know. Is he destined for gold at 205? I don't know. But what I do know is that he's going to keep putting on some good fights. He's going to keep entertaining, and he's probably going to choke a few more people out before he calls it quits on his career. So happy for Andy Clamp. Will we see Abdenabi again? Probably. Light heavyweight's a very thin division. He's probably got some knockouts in him. Throw him in there with Chuck Campbell or one of those guys and let him cook, as the kids say. And now we get into what was most definitely my favorite fight on the card, and actually a fight that I spent all week saying that, forget people telling you this will be the fight of the night. This has the potential to be the fight of the year in Cage Warriors. And did it reach those heights? No. Did it reach fight of the night heights? Yes, because it was definitely the best fight on the card. It's Rory Evans versus Jack Eglin. Rory Evans, obviously the hometown hero. Jack Eglin, a fighter that I've gone on record to say might be the best 3-2 fighter on the planet, because it's absolutely insane. Like, obviously, he's fought some high caliber opposition, this guy should not be 3-2. And it just goes to show again that records don't really matter, because he's literally in my opinion, one of the best fighters in the promotion right now. And he's now 4-2 because he won. It's not a record people would find attractive. If he was 6-0, everyone would be going nuts right now. But he's 4-2, and I'm here to tell you that Jack Eglin is the real deal. And the reason is that this wasn't flawless in the way that Reece McEwan's was. This was dirty. This was a comeback win for him. This was a fight where he faced a lot of adversity. But when you put that much adversity on a fighter who is 3-2, and he takes it on the chin, comes out the next round and puts a beating on his opponent, that's when you know a fighter is for real. And I was really, really impressed with Jack Eglin, but I was also impressed with Rory Evans. Like in that first round, had some beautiful level changes to get Eglin down, and he got him down nice and early, tried to get the ghillie in, didn't manage to get it. Eglin did a great job escaping, and actually Eglin's defensive grappling in this fight, very, very impressive, because against a top grappler like Evans, a guy who can wrestle, a guy who can submit people, Eglin did a fantastic job at defending the really, really tough submission positions that Evans had him in. Jesus, forgot to talk just then. The ghillie, again, like I said, Eglin did a great job to escape it. Evans was landing some really cracking elbows on top, and I started to think, Eglin is at this point getting kind of dominated. He's getting beaten on. There's a point where Evans passes off to the side, gets a head and arm choke on Eglin. Just a beautiful setup. He kept rotating his body as well to like tighten up the choke, and I thought, he's probably gonna tap, but guy's tough as nails, and it's not just about toughness, because you can be tough in a submission, and for the most part you will just get put to sleep, right? Like we saw on this card, and we'll definitely get to that, because there are a few people who got put to sleep on this one. But Eglin's face had gone blue, right? Like when Evans let go of the head and arm choke, because he didn't have the angle anymore, and Eglin had more or less, maybe Evans didn't want to squeeze anymore. He wanted to preserve his energy, thought he could get it at a better angle. But when he let go, you go back and look at it, Eglin, all the color had come out of Eglin's face, and he just toughed it out. And I was very impressed, because coming out of that first round, I was like, damn, Rory Evans looks good. That's as decisive a 10-9 as you're going to get. Not a 10-8, because there wasn't enough disparity there in the damage and all, but comes out in the second round, and Evans throws a strike. I think he throws the first strike of that second round. It's him that throws it, and he cuts Eglin up pretty bad. Eglin's now bleeding, and you're thinking, well, he's just suffered in that first round a pretty dominant grappling exchange. Like he's really struggled with Evans. Comes out in the second round. Now he's bleeding. Blood's going over. I think it was just to the side of his eye, like it was on his eyebrow, but wasn't really going into his eye, I don't think. But the visual of that blood pouring down his face, and you start to think, well, is Eglin going to fold here? But Eglin just puts both his middle fingers up at anyone who was thinking that, and just lands a really clean uppercut on Evans. Evans walks through it, which is just insane. But you start to see Eglin going for it, just like he always does, clean striking angles, beautiful work, nice jab, tight straights as well. The hooks are there. It was just stunning. Like Evans did try to wrestle in this round, and he just didn't have the energy that he had in round one. Eglin defended it well. It was the work to the body that I loved. When I saw Eglin go to the body once and then twice and then three times, like he tripled up on the hook to the body. Like I always say, if you strike to the body, you are a friend of mine, because anyone who strikes to the body is I'm immediately endeared to that person, because it's just a beautiful techniques to the body will always get me. And Eglin had that, continued stalking Evans. Like Evans was shooting out of desperation. Eglin was defending it well. And then, Eglin continued stalking him, landed strike after strike. Goddard was warning Evans to move. Evans wasn't really doing much. And then it's just a picture-perfect knee from Eglin, folds Evans, forces the stoppage in round two, and it's just an incredible comeback win. Maybe people forget about it a few weeks from now, a few months from now, but I certainly won't, because I thought Eglin was down and out, and to come back the way he did, to win the way that he did, to finish the fight the way that he did, this guy's for real. And I'm here to tell you that Jack Eglin is that guy, and I think Do we see him again this year? I hope we do, because that would be 3 times, and I think it's a good opportunity for him to build his name up in the promotion. But every time this guy fights, it's just guaranteed fireworks. And how can you not love a fighter like that? And now we're gonna talk about a fight, and it's gonna last longer than the fight did, because talking about Dan Kneil versus Jimmy Quinn. Jimmy Quinn making his pro debut, really kind of storied amateur career, great finishes on the amateur circuit in the Cage Warriors amateur circuit. He's got a spinning hook kick that they showed a lot in the highlights package. He's a guy who's just absolute fun, just seems very energetic in the cage. And I've already spoken for longer than 10 seconds, and that's how long this fight lasted. We lost our minds over the Sam Kelly knockout over Sahota, right? And that was, I believe, 11 seconds that they called it at. And that was the fastest knockout in Cage Warriors history, or it was tied for the fastest knockout in Cage Warriors history. And, I had that down in my notes. This is going to be one of the finishes of the year that I'm going to talk about in the Yellow Glove Awards at the end of the year. And then Jimmy Quinn comes in and he's like, don't forget about me, motherfucker. He goes in there, smashes the record for fastest KO in Cage Warriors history. They clocked it in at 10 seconds. I would say it was 9 seconds looking at the footage, but whatever, they're the timekeepers. They know when things happened. But Jimmy Quinn goes in there and just face plants Kneil with a left hook from hell. Face plants Kneil, goes in for the ground and pound. Ref's probably a bit late to jumping in. He doesn't react quick enough. And I mean, how can you blame him? They've barely warmed up and a guy's on his face getting pounded in. So really, really impressed by Jimmy Quinn. Not a crazy amount to say. We still don't know a crazy amount about him. He's 1-0 now. We'll definitely see him again this year. I think he's going to turn around fairly quickly. I wouldn't even be surprised if they managed to book him on that London card. I know he's from Dagenham, so London would obviously be a pretty favourable card for him. Can he turn around that quickly? I don't know. I mean, it's a 10-second fight. I don't know what his weight cut is like, but a fighter that I'm really excited to learn more about. Just an insane, like, knocking someone out in your pro debut is nice enough. Doing it and setting a record, breaking a record in a respected promotion like Cage Warriors, probably the best promotion in Europe. To do that in your debut, flowers for Jimmy Quinn, because absolutely incredible. I can't wait to see him again. Not a crazy amount to say, like I've been mentioning, but props to Jimmy Quinn. Will we see Dan Kneil again? Maybe. I don't know. Probably not. But yeah, Jimmy Quinn did what he had to do, and he did it in emphatic fashion. So now we get to the prelim portions of the card, and again we'll work from the first fight order, or from the last fight, so the prelim headliner, all the way down to the first fight of the card. Probably going to breeze through these a little because there are a lot of quick finishes, not crazy amount to talk about. This is just a 9-fight card, which usually we get anywhere between 15 and 13, so a considerably smaller card here. We had Scott Pedersen versus Johan Salvador. If you know me, you know I'm a Scott Pedersen guy. It will always make me laugh. The guy just looks like Tim Elliott if you stretch Tim Elliott out a little bit. I mean, it's just a spitting image of Tim Elliott. But I mean, Pedersen walkout was killer. I think he walked out to Pot of Paper. If you've not listened to Pot of Paper's latest album, I think it's, if you're into the UK rap and the rap scene in general in the UK, I think Pot of Paper's album is one of the best we've had in the last few years. Been listening to Pot of Paper since his mixtapes and all of that in the early 2010s. So a great walkout choice, a great walkout song choice even. Sorry for Pedersen, and a great performance for him too. Johan Salvador's a dog. He's a vet, but Pedersen again. Don't sleep on the Welsh grapplers. I say this all the time. I've been saying this for the longest time. People need to respect the level of wrestling coming out of Wales right now, the level of grappling coming out of Wales right now. Yes, we talk about the Mason Jones of the world, the Jack Shaws of the world, the Oban Elliots of the world. But let's also put some respect on the other guys, because we got grapplers everywhere. Look at Rory Evans. Look at what Scott Pedersen did here. And we've got another a great grappling moment from a Welsh fighter that we'll talk about later on in this episode. But Scott Pedersen, easy double leg takedown in this fight. Salvador tried to get back to his feet, but it wasn't great optics for him, because getting taken down like seconds into a fight and so easily as well isn't always great. And then a few seconds later, Pedersen had him down again. The most slickest back take you'll see on this card was just beautiful, the way he transitioned to the back, got the body triangle in so easily. And then what I loved is that if you've been watching MMA for a while, or even if you appreciate the history of the game, or you look back at some of the greatest fighters, what was BJ Penn known for? He was known for trapping the arm under the body triangle. That we saw him do it against Joe Stevenson. We saw him do it against Jens Pulver as well. And then Pedersen does it in this fight, and I absolutely loved it. I was geeking out. Trapped the arm under the body triangle. Johan Salvador could do nothing. Rear naked choke, just beautifully applied. Round one submission. So happy to see Scott Pedersen back in the win column, back in Cage Warriors, winning fights. Really fun fighter, really good grappler. Just was awesome to see him back and to see him winning a fight. So happy for Scott Pedersen. I would honestly seek out watching this as a nice highlight on this card, because it's getting lost amidst the flashy knockout and one of the chokes that we'll talk about shortly. I'm sure it's not getting that much props amidst everything that happened. The Eglin knockout, but Pedersen's submission was from a technical perspective was just stunning. I know that Strauss was loving it in the commentary box as well. So again, go seek out that highlight finish. Or if you want to watch the whole fight, I mean, it lasted about 2 minutes, so definitely worth seeking out. We then had Milad Ahadi versus Marcondes Bastos. Ahadi is a guy that I've been saying is one of the best prospects that you don't know about in the UK. You know, we all talk about our Luke Rileys, and we talk about the other fighters coming up, the guys that we're all excited about, Kalen Lockrans, blah blah blah. But Milad is on the precipice. He's on the cusp, and people aren't really talking about him. He had a bit of inactivity, and then he's doing the Fight Academy, MMA Fight Academy thing with Cage Warriors. But this guy is such an awesome striker. He's got such a diverse and a deep toolbox for his striking. It's brilliant to see. Nice little grappling pedigree as well. But it's the striking that whenever I see this guy fight, I'm like, he's destined to. I don't know what his ceiling is, but as of right now, I really think that he can at least get a Cage Warriors belt in there and do something really promising of his career, because it's just about having the activity in there. He's not as young as you'd think he is, and he's still early into his MMA career, but you can tell that his game is a veteran's game. The way he strikes is like someone who has been striking for many years, far beyond the age that he has, right? So Milad Ahadi was just excellent in this fight. Marcondes Bastos, it was poorly matched, just from the sense that Bastos looked unfit. I know he came in on short notice. He didn't look ready to fight at that weight class. He looked a bit stodgy. He looked a bit slow, and Milad Ahadi just had his way with him. Ahadi was, trying to get the highlight reel finish. You could tell he was hunting that left head kick. He was setting it up really well, and Bastos was just eating it. And Bastos ate a lot of strikes, right? Like, he kept trying to take Ahadi down. Ahadi was just getting back to his feet and then just beating on him. 10-8 round in the first round, in my opinion. Ahadi had obviously a beautiful left uppercut followed by a knee that was really nice. Dominant, going to the body. Bastos was like hobbling back to his corner from all the calf kicks and body shots. His corner woman, I don't know if that's his head coach or if that's a partner of his, or I don't know what's going on there, but she was tearing into him. Like, she was fingering his face, shouting at him, telling him like, you need to go finish this guy. And it was obviously quite funny to see. And Bastos just looked like, it was a tough day at the office for him. He probably, signed up to get a paycheck, probably thought he could beat this younger fighter, and didn't really go that way. First round was definitely a 10-8. I mean, the disparity in damage was, it was all the damage versus none of the damage. So definitely have to have a 10-8 in there. And then in round two, Ahadi stuffs multiple takedowns. Bastos is really just shooting out of desperation and lazy shots. Ahadi keeps digging to the body, keeps going over and over again, backs Bastos up against the fence, lands a cracking hook to the body, folds Bastos. I think Mark Goddard was refereeing, stepped in immediately. Easy as you like for Ahadi. Think that he's destined for some really good things in Cage Warriors. Great performance, great finish. Keep an eye out for Milad Ahadi. And now we're going to talk about probably the biggest highlight that came out of this card, and it was the only female fight on the card. It was Małgorzata Tkocz versus Stephanie Evans. Koch making her Cage Warriors debut. Evans, a fighter we've already seen. Unfortunately, she lost her first fight, her professional fight in Cage Warriors, but she's had a long amateur career. Again, a really respected grappler. And, Koch looked really good early, and I thought, man, like they've matched Evans quite harshly here. Like, this is a rangy fighter, someone who's faster. Like, you could tell there was a speed disparity between both fighters. Koch was landing a really quick jab over and over, using her range really, really well. And then Evans just found the perfect grappling opportunity in between to Koch trying to strike. What Evans did really well is that she ate a few shots just to pressure to Koch into the fence. And once she got to Koch down, she was really patient, slowly inched her way to Koch's back, got the inside body triangle with a minute to go, and then she applies the rear naked choke with seconds, right? You hear the clapper, 10 seconds left, and you see Evans squeezing for all dear life. And then Koch does this pretty insane, a pretty insane decision, I guess. And she starts punching behind her head, trying to punch Evans while she's getting choked out. Quite amateurish, unless you're Jan Quayhagens. Quayhagens messaged me after the fight, and then he was, ribbing on the fact that he did that and it worked for him. So that's a wild exception to the rule, like I said to Quayhagens. But if you're punching behind your head while someone's got your neck and all the colors going out of your face, you should probably be fighting the hands instead of punching behind your head, unless you're Jan Quayhagens, of course. And it turned out to be a pretty sick highlight finish for Stephanie Evans, because Koch is just completely out. She's punching, and then you see her arm just go limp. It's a pretty nasty visual. When Evans lets go of the choke, you can tell Koch is just completely out of it, completely put to sleep. And it was just a nasty finish from Stephanie Evans. She'll probably take a lot of pride and a lot of encouragement out of that. She's won her first fight as a pro now. Really exciting. I mean, she's probably only going to fight on these Wales cards. Maybe they'll put her in there against some other fighters on different cards, but I really think she's probably just going to be on these Wales cards. It's a good hometown fighter, a good fighter as well, someone who can finish fights clearly, someone who's got a good, respectable amateur career. Props to Stephanie Evans. I'm going to remember this fight for a while, only because of how, I don't like to rib on fighters, but yeah, punching behind your head is just, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But I'll remember it just for the nasty visual and the buzzer beater. I mean, who doesn't like a buzzer beater finish in MMA? And Stephanie Evans has one. Not a lot of fighters can say that they do. So props to Stephanie Evans there. All right, and then the last fight that we'll talk about, which was the first fight on this card, was Marin Vetrilla versus El Hadjandai. Not a crazy amount to say about this fight. It was probably the least entertaining fight on the card, mainly because I just felt like Ndai knew what his path to victory was, and Vetrilla had no way of defending it. I know Vetrilla was a favorite going into it, I believe. Ndai, obviously, on a 2-fight skid in Cage Warriors, yet to win in the promotion. Loved Ndai's walkout, Lion King remix, that theme song. Had the lion's head with him as well. Really memorable. We've had some really cool walkouts this year in Cage Warriors, and Ndai's one is right up there. But in terms of the fight, I mean, it was, for me, a 29-28 for Ndai. Once he got the grappling going, it wasn't a pretty performance. I'm sure he himself will say it, that it wasn't pretty, but it was effective, and he got the job done, and that's all that matters. Vetrilla just kept what I didn't understand. And he's young, he's still getting into understanding the fight game and understanding the ebb and flow of a fight, but he kept attacking the guillotine when he had no angle on it, and every time that he did, he would just give up his position, and Ndai would just sit on him and dominate him. He almost had it. He almost had the guillotine, I believe, in the first round, and I think that might have boosted his ego up a little bit and maybe made him think that he's got Ndai where he wants him. And actually, Ndai was pretty happy to give up his neck, because every time he did, it was a free takedown, just free real estate, like they say. And yeah, not a crazy fight. Again, not much to say. Vetrilla, do you know what? I'm just usually, I don't like. I'm not ribbing on the fighters or anything like that. But like, I felt like Vetrilla threw the fight. Not intentionally, obviously. I'm not saying that there's bribery or any of that in Cage Warriors. What I'm saying is, I feel like he threw the fight from his own personal perspective. I feel like he could have adapted a bit better to the game, and maybe that's going to come with experience. And that's why you put these young fighters against these more veteran fighters like Ndai. You do it to test their IQ as well. And I felt like Ventrilla just he practically threw the fight away. He was far too happy off his back. He wasn't getting any success off his back. The overconfidence in fighting off his back was strange. He could have built back up to his feet. In a striking game, maybe he would have been better than Ndai. But look, Ndai grinding the fight out. He's got his first win in Cage Warriors now. Snaps his 0-2 skid. We'll see Ventrilla again, I'm sure, and maybe he'll put on a better performance. He's still learning, but it was a very kind of dominant display for Ndai. Once he figured that the grappling was there for him, he just abused it all night long. And so that kind of wraps up the recap of Cage Warriors 156 in Wales. We had a buzzer beater submission. We had a fastest knockout ever in Cage Warriors history. So you can't complain too much because you still had some really memorable moments. And I think now's a pretty good spot for Cage Warriors because we've got this Wales card was kind of the appetizer. You got the London card July 21st, and then the week after, I believe, you've got the Rome card. It's Martignoni versus Hack for the flyweight belt. So you've got some really exciting cards coming up. Some of the best fighters in the promotion will be fighting in the next few weeks. So I'm obviously going to be covering those. What we're going to do next week, probably in between those fight cards, just to have some more content out for you guys. I'm probably going to do a mid-year awards show. So as you know, I do my Yellow Glove Awards. We did one for 2022. That was one of the first episodes of the pod. We're going to do mid-year awards just to see where we're at, and then at the end of the year we can compare to what changed from the middle of the year. Obviously we've got some really good contenders in there. I mean, finish of the year, I'm kind of still racking my brain over that because you've got two of the fastest finishes we've ever seen. You've got a huge underdog knockout win, so there's some great storylines there. But that's just kind of what's in the pipeline for the pod, and that's effectively it for this one. If you've enjoyed listening to it, like I always say, please leave a review wherever you're listening to it on. If there's a like system, if you're on YouTube, like it, subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a review, 5 stars if you believe that it's 5 stars. If not, tell me I suck. I'd appreciate that too. Any feedback's good feedback. You can tweet me, Yellow Gloves Pod, or you can message me on Instagram, Yellow Gloves Pod as well. Always happy to interact about anything Cage Warriors, anything UK MMA. And I guess that's effectively it for this episode. If you've enjoyed listening to it, like I said, do all of that good stuff for me, and I will catch you all on the next one.